What is up? Welcome back to the Brave in the Attempt podcast. I'm your host, Wyatt Spalding, and today we're joined by Creighton University dietitian Meagan Hall. Meagan, thanks for coming on today.
You're very welcome. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So Meagan, we know you're into dietitian, but just tell us a little bit about yourself and growing up and how sports was a big impact on your life.
Wonderful. So I am born and raised in Nebraska, from small town Nebraska. I played a variety of sports growing up. I can't say I was the most athletic person, but played t-ball, softball, soccer, and then in high school did volleyball, cheerleading, and powerlifting. So always doing some kind of activity. My twin sister was definitely, I would say, more of the athlete of the two of us. She did soccer, basketball, cross country, played softball a lot longer than I did, but always an active person. So yeah, just did a lot of sports growing up and always had a passion for being physically active. And I think that has definitely translated into the work I do as a dietitian now.
So growing up was like dietitian or just being nutritious, was that a big part in you playing sports, or did you not realize
You
that till
know,
you got older?
I think I didn't exactly realize it till I got older. I will be honest, I didn't even know what a dietitian was until I got to college.
Mhm.
But my mom has always been very into nutrition and always, was cooking regularly. We always had a fruit and vegetable for dinner. We never ate out, like no sugary drinks in the house. Things that at the time growing up, I thought she was just trying to ruin us, right?
Yeah.
But now, as an adult and a dietitian, I definitely appreciate all the steps that she took to keep us really healthy. And I think she was always, pushing us to make sure that we were eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, having good quality snacks at home, So a lot of that side of things was instilled from a young age, and again, making sure that we weren't eating junk when we were getting ready to do physical activities. So yes, it was always there, but I don't know that I always put it together the way I put it together now.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of us do when we're teenagers.
That's
I,
exactly right.
yeah, I'm a twin too, so we
Awesome.
yeah, so like my twin now is into all that health and nutrition stuff, and but like yeah, like you think like as a high schooler, like oh, I can work out forever, I don't need to recover,
I can eat
and
whatever I want and get away
yeah,
with
and
it.
same in college, but I guess when you get to college, it's a little more harder. So,
Yes.
what made you want to go into like being a dietitian when you got to college?
When I got to college, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to help people, and I was looking at a lot of different avenues. Again, I liked the physical activity side of things, and my twin sister knew from day one she wanted to be an athletic trainer. And so I had met with, I think it was maybe the end of my freshman year, beginning of my sophomore year, her kind of college guidance counselor in a sense. I don't think that's what they're really called, but her advisor.
Mhm.
And she said, well, have you ever thought about, you're taking all these science classes. Have you ever thought about being a dietitian and kind of going that route? And I said, well, I don't even know if I really know what that is exactly. And so I went on with going through that and learning more about those opportunities. And yeah, that's kind of how it all came together, that that was the decision for what I was going to do. I think that um, one of the things my degree is actually what they say is nutrition, fitness, health promotion with minor in psychology, so nutrition and exercise science background, and then the dietetics was added on towards the end of it. And then yeah, just went on with the path that way. And I knew with exercise science, a lot of the fellow classmates were going on to like PT school or PA school, and I did not want to do any of that. But I knew that the I could help people and counsel people with the nutrition side of things, so that's where it came from.
Cool. So when you went into like nutrition, what is like a fact you didn't know, but then you thought was super cool when you first got into studying nutrition?
Oh man, I mean, I think there's so many things out there, and I think the challenge that I faced and all dietitians face is dispelling all the myths that are still out there. I think for me, probably one of the biggest like eye openers was you actually have to eat to lose weight, right? We can't just cut everything out. We can't, you know, only eat 1,200 calories every day. I think that's the myth that I would love to go away, that 1,200 calories is the adequate amount for people to eat. So I think that for me was kind of like, oh yeah, definitely. Let's talk about what we can add to the plate as always, what we have to take away to put ourselves in a healthier place.
Yeah, for sure. So like now that you deal with like Creighton athletes, what do they have to do to stay in shape in the season and off season that, not your average person that works out 3 to 4 times a week has to do?
I have to remind them they're all individuals. Everybody's needs are different. Everybody's, sporting behaviors are different. So it's not a cookie cutter model. So I love working with them individually and reminding them, for their each specific thing. The number one thing I'm reminding them, they're busy. They are full-time students and full-time athletes. Is we just have to make sure that eating is as much a part of the routine as your physical activity is. And they can't get away with missing meals. It's just not going to be conducive to their performance. So really just, okay, basics. How many meals a day are we having? How many snacks a day are we having? What can we do to improve upon that? And then it's really pinpointing, making sure they're getting the, adequate protein in their diet, but also adequate carbohydrate intake and fat intake. One of the things I hear from our student athletes a lot is, oh, I just drink water. That's the only beverage I drink. But really working with them to make sure that they're drinking sports beverages as well to make sure they're getting those electrolytes in. I think we hear, for the general population, maybe they don't need that sports beverage. For our athletes, they definitely do, especially this year. The weather has been kind of all over the place and very inconsistent. So again, making sure that they're hydrated enough. Some of my athletes, I have to put reminders in on their phones to beep at them to tell them you need to eat, you need to drink, just because they do get really busy. And so it's really for our athletes, especially making sure that nutrition is just a part of as big a part of the program as their weight training and their actual like practice scheduling is, that it has to be a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So like playing Special Olympics, some of us play 3 to 5 sports, and like there's the Olympic part. And so you train for only one event or two, but you're training. But would you say if you're playing like a lot of sports, like Special Olympic athletes do, like we do need that nutrition? Because some people think we just have to show up and play. But now it's like there's more elite divisions. It's like maybe we should all like be in better shape and eat
Yes.
healthier.
Definitely. I always say I have worked I worked at the YMCA for a long time and, been involved in a lot of different kind of avenues that have gotten me still to be able to use my skills as a dietitian. I worked at a running shoe store. And so it always kind of finds its way back into that topic of discussion. But I always tell people it's what you make of it, what you want, right? If you want to be able to perform better, have better endurance, better stamina. Nutrition is a key, crucial part of that. Yes, I can eat McDonald's 3 times a day and go be active, but am I going to see the long-term results that I want from it? Most likely not. So it is crucial too, thinking of the timing of things. If I eat too close to going and being physically active, is that going to cause me more problems than it's going to help? Am I making sure that I'm refueling after that activity to make sure that I help with reducing any kind of side effects like fatigue, soreness, and making sure that again I'm getting those fluids rehydrated. So there's so many things that I have to do. Even the general population that's a physically active person, all of these things they need to do too. It just may not be to the extreme that a Special Olympic athlete or a collegiate athlete is.
Yes. So like, especially like sometimes we get like these healthy athletes, but it's only like once or twice a year.
Yeah.
And we get diagnosed that we didn't even know about, or it affects our training. So how if someone has like is trying to stay in shape but has like for me, I have some medical issues, what would be your advice? Like, yeah, you're trying to stay in shape, but you have like some either medical issue or maybe like some back pain. from your disability that affects you?
Mhm.
How would you train through that? Just
I always am mindful that everybody is different, right? I said that kind of a little bit ago that everybody is an individualized. So really working with them and saying, okay, what are your goals? That's number one.
Mhm.
And then what is your physical activity level? What are the types of physical activity things that you like to do? And then really then I always, with all my athletes and other individuals I work with, kind of a 24-hour recall. What is a typical day of eating for you, and finding some of those areas that we can improve upon.
Mhm.
And maybe sometimes nutrition can help with some of the other things that you're experiencing. Sometimes it's not going to make any difference with it. So it's just knowing that, yes, food can be helpful and solve some concerns, but it doesn't always, it's unfortunately not a miracle. We can't do it all, right? We can't, eating isn't going to make everything better, but maybe if you have specific concerns and we can get your diet cleaned up a little bit, maybe it reduces inflammation and you feel better that way, right? Or we get more fruits and vegetables in, and just overall you're physically feeling better because we're eating better quality food. I think that makes a big difference as well. But each person I definitely want to, would work with individually and say, okay, what are some of your concerns? What are things that you feel like you should work on, or what's the number one thing that you have a concern about in your eating habits, and then kind of expanding from there.
Yeah. So, like seeing a doctor regularly, like how important do you think it is to like see a doctor like once or twice a year, especially if whether you're playing Division 1 at Creighton or you're playing Special Olympics all year round? How important is that?
I think knowing your health background and getting regular checkups is one of the best things that we can do for ourselves. I think the more we know, the more proactive we can be in our own health journey, and the more we can set ourselves up for success. Sometimes I think we have the attitude of, well, what I don't know isn't going to hurt me, but really in the long term, what we don't know can be very detrimental. And so I think getting regular checkups, having regular lab work done. I know for our athletes, they get regular lab work done at the beginning of the semester, and then maybe, at the end of the season, just to make sure if there's any nutritional deficiencies that we can work on to help improve their performance that way, and just overall make them in a healthier place. So I'm definitely a fan of, yes, get in, see your doctor, do the regular checkups just to make sure that everything is working how it's supposed to be, because knowing it early on can be a much easier fix or something to deal with than if it's gone to a really bad place.
Yeah, for sure. Have you ever worked with an athlete at at Creighton or just any T1 athlete that actually does maybe have a medical condition or some weird dietitian that, like, a fan like us, we would never know about because they look so in good shape on the basketball court or soccer
Yeah,
field. So,
I think people would be surprised how often there are athletes that have specific dietary needs, whether they're a type 1 diabetic. That can be challenging if you're a type 1 diabetic, and making sure that you're eating adequately and taking your insulin regularly to help. It could definitely affect their play and their performance. We've got athletes that have food allergies that again can be difficult, especially when they're traveling on the road. We've got athletes that have nutritional deficiencies. And that's where we're testing, especially our female athletes, for their iron levels. We're testing for vitamin D levels. So I think that people would probably be, we do look at, especially as athletes, as that they can have any issues, right? They all look so healthy, like you said, very in shape. But there's some underlying things that we have to work with. So I would say most of our athletes don't have a lot of issues, right? But we do have a select few that may have some other health conditions that definitely come into play, that we have to be more mindful of, and really monitor how they're eating to make sure that they're getting what they need.
yeah, like you don't really hear about it in college, but when they get to the pros, like I've read some articles like, wow, I never really thought like that person would have asthma or there's some
Yeah,
other like medical thing you don't like, you can't even pronounce the word. And it's like,
yeah,
wow, they really have that? Like I would never notice. But
yep.
do you think like, I guess whether you're playing recreational or like D1, obviously like the stress that sports puts on your body, and if you're playing competitively like at Creighton, like the mental aspect, can that affect there? nutrition as well?
Definitely. I think all people deal with stress differently and it can manifest in different ways. And for some people, stress causes them to eat maybe more than what their body needs. Sometimes it causes them to eat less desirable foods. If we're stress eating, we're not typically reaching for carrots and celery sticks, right? We're reaching
Mm.
for, as a dietitian would always say, stress spelled backwards is desserts. So we're reaching for those foods that are very comforting. Um, if, for some, then it also causes them to not have the desire to eat. It really reduces their appetite, which then means that they're not fueling adequately, which then, if we're not fueling adequately, can lead to more injury risk. So yeah, it could be definitely like a snowball effect. And that's what I think is so good for non-competitive athletes and competitive athletes, having a team around you, going to your doctor regularly. At Creighton, we have not just me as the dietitian, we have athletic trainers, we have our performance coaches, we have medical staff, everybody is monitoring these folks along the way, their assistant coaches, their coaches, we are with these athletes. Somebody is touching base with these athletes day in and day out. And so we notice even just a little kind of change or a little falter that can make a difference in their performance. And we try and be as proactive with things as possible. Some of our teams even have like sport bands that they're wearing that track their sleep, their recovery, the information amount that we are gathering from these athletes just to help their performance be better, is like the technology is just getting more and more involved year in and year out. So it's not just the nutrition side, it's so many things. And again, it can easily snowball and affect everything. And so that's why it's that team surrounding them that really makes a difference.
Yeah, for sure. What advice would you give to like a special Olympic athlete? Like some of us like just have a disability, so we deal with that daily. Or like me personally, like I have medical condition on top of that. So like someone who has a disability and then medical conditions, a lot of us we deal with stress just because we're sick or whatever. So if we don't have all
Yeah.
the technology like that Creighton has, what would you advice give to a special Olympic athlete that they're stressed because they're sick and their relief system is playing sports, but they can't play sports right now
Right.
because they're dealing with the health factor.
When we have athletes, especially that do get injured and they, like you, their relief is their physical activity, right? It's finding what, other coping mechanisms. Maybe it's journaling, or, reading a book, finding something else that can be like a self-care thing for you. Maybe it's cooking. Maybe that is kind of a stress relief for you. Sometimes cooking causes more stress than it actually relieves, but for some people it might be a little bit of a stress relief. So it's just finding some other ways to maybe get out some of that anxiety, stress, frustration. And then the best piece of advice I can give is controlling what you can control. And we can't control a lot of things most of the time. So, picking one thing that maybe you could work on. Like right now, I know I'm injured and I want to make sure that I'm doing still good things to keep myself healthy. I'm going to kind of look at how I'm eating and see if there's one thing that I can maybe pinpoint that I think I could do better on. Maybe it's I don't really drink a lot of water. Maybe it's that basic, like I'm going to work on better hydration. Better hydration makes a huge difference across the board for anybody. Or, maybe I don't like a lot of fruit, but I do like apples or pears, and I'm going to try and eat an apple or a pear every single day to make sure I'm getting better fruit intake. Or, I skip meals a lot. Like I'm not great at breakfast. What can I do to improve just one small thing during the day that will make everything, a little bit better? When we're stressed or if we, experience, a lot of anxiety or especially like anxiety around eating, the more we restrict our intake, actually the worse that makes that stress and anxiety. So making sure that we're fueling adequately can really help with a lot of other physical and mental stuff. Our brain is the number one thing affected when we cut back on foods or when we're skipping meals. Like we have to fuel the brain to be able to function and think. And so if I'm not fueling adequately, that's going to again be that tailspin of everything else going out of control. So just making sure again that you can find one little step of things that you can work on.
Yeah, like one of the stations, like some of its doctor's appointments, like you can get glasses and have a dentist appointment at healthy athletes, but then another station is like Healthy Minds, and they just ask you how you're feeling, which is good. But like for a lot of us, that's like the one time we'll get that. So yeah,
Yeah.
like having a teammate that does help, and like you don't really, I guess, think about the more mental side of sports,
Yep,
especially if you just get into it.
definitely.
So do you ever like do nutrition plans for coaches as well, or just players at Creighton?
Most of the time, it's just our athletes. I've had coaches make comments that they should come and reach out to me, but they don't always do that.
Yeah.
Um, they're very busy too, so I think their number one goal, as most people, is making sure either their children or like their athletes are taken care of, right? We always want to take care of somebody else first. So that is pretty much predominantly who I'm working with, but I definitely get questions from, again, all of our staff across the board of different things that can be helped out with. So,
Nice. So, like in your spare time, what do you like to do to stay healthy, even though you deal with health all day long?
yes. Well, I always say I'm a big foodie. I love to eat. And I think sometimes people think dietitians don't love to eat, but we love to eat. And I like to try different foods and I like to dine out at different restaurants. So that's something I really enjoy in my spare time. For a long time, what really got me into sports nutrition is I was an endurance runner. So I've run 9 marathons and probably 13 or 14 half marathons. And that was really when the nutrition side of things really clicked into me about the difference that I could do in my performance by just fueling my body adequately. And so that I think is really what sparked more of that sports nutrition. I haven't run for a really long time. I'm working to kind of get back into that too, because that was definitely for me a big, nice stress reliever was getting that kind of physical activity. But really, I even just walking. I have 4 dogs, so getting out and taking them for walks is also really good too.
Nice. 4 dogs. That sounds great.
It's a little crazy some days,
I
but
bet. What's the farthest you've ran when you did marathons?
so I have actually for a fundraiser, I ran like over, I think like 31 or 32 miles on a treadmill. That's the farthest I've gone. Otherwise, the 26.2 for the marathons.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like when you're training for something like that, you definitely have to probably take in a lot of water and
Yes.
stuff and healthy. Like, is it still hard though when you run the marathon? It's like you do everything super healthy, but like you're still like struggling through the marathon.
Yeah, because you have to make sure that you're fueled adequately just to get to that point and that you're hydrated adequately just to get to that point. And that's what I remind a lot of our athletes too, is we're not just eating for the day of, or we're not just making sure we're hydrated for that day of competition. We need it to be all the time. Consistency is key. And so it can't just be from like, okay, I'm going to make sure I drink enough water today because we have a game today. No, it needs to be I'm drinking enough of that day in and day out so that my body is adequately hydrated and fueled consistently. I will say I like to indulge after a long race, right? Typically, I like to have like a big greasy cheeseburger and French fries and a nice ice cold beer to kind of celebrate the finish of a big race.
Yeah.
But definitely, have to. I also know individually for me, there are certain foods that can be upsetting to my stomach before I run. So I have to also be kind of cautious and aware of any of those things that may cause me some more problems and help me. So all those little nuances that go with it.
Yeah, for sure. So whether you're a D1 athlete or specifically like a special Olympic athlete, where we're just playing sports all year round, like we shouldn't just go out and play. We should actually try to like train like we're, a college or high school athlete trying to compete for our sports, right?
Most definitely. Training is key. We can't just, I mean, some people can just go and take a test in a classroom and ace it, right? But most of the time we have to have that education and studying to have that knowledge base to pass the exam. That's the same way for sports. We have to train and practice and repeat drills to make sure that we're ready to go. And a part of that is the nutrition side of things too. So unfortunately, it's not just that we can all be skilled, even our professional athletes NBA players, NFL players, our professional volleyball players, Olympic athletes, they all have to train and train and train. They're not just showing up to the Olympics ready to go. They're taking 4 years for the Olympics to get prepared and train for that, right? Which also encompasses their diet, their sleep, their mental health. So much goes into all of those, to make sure that they're in their peak condition.
Yeah, for sure. Like we have the US and World Games, and those are every 4 years, and we practice for a year, but it's like you got to prepare like 3 or 4 years before, because if you get
Mm-hmm.
picked, and you'll see athletes that are in great shape and athletes that are in okay shape, but it's like
Yeah.
when we definitely have that coming up, like we should train like we're playing for Creighton or something like that, probably.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So one last question, just for fun, do you go to a lot of the Creighton events to watch?
I I do. I try to get to as many as I can. I'm a contract employee with Creighton. So I'm not full-time at Creighton. I have a full-time job on top of working with the Creighton athletes. So
Oh,
I'm pretty busy, but I try and get to as many things as I can. I don't travel to many of the away games, just because when we're playing in the Big East, that's a big travel expense to go to those things. But I definitely try and I've been to couple of men's women's soccer games, a couple of the volleyball games, and as our basketball season gets going, I'll go to baseball, softball, all of those things I try to get to as much as I can.
oh, that's awesome. Yeah, they
Yeah,
are pretty good in a lot of sports now, so I bet it's fun for you to
it's
go.
definitely
And
fun to watch.
yeah, especially knowing the players and seeing them succeed. Is that pretty fulfilling for you?
Yes, definitely. And especially when I know like some of them I've worked really, one-on-one with, or like that team as a whole specifically, it's awesome to kind of see it all come to fruition, all the effort that us as staff has done to help them, and then all the effort they have done to get there. It's rewarding, is probably the simplest word to say.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the Brave and Intent podcast and sharing the Special Olympic athletes and just people that work out in general on what we should do to stay healthy. So really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today.
Yeah, thank you. Well, that was a great interview with the dietitian at Creighton University, Meagan Hall. If you take anything from this um, episode, is that Special Olympic athletes, we need to be in shape. We gotta get better discipline of just like training, doing the little things, maybe having a fruit a day, or just drinking a little more water. Because we want to be competitive in the sports we play. And I know, like I said, like there's some of us, including me, that we have some health issues that do make it hard to stay healthy at times, but that shouldn't mean it should stop us from trying to be the healthiest athlete and person we want to be. So I hope that you athletes and just anyone in the Special Olympic community and anybody that trains in sports takes some advice that Megan Hall gave here and you add it to your everyday training. Because when the USA Games come for Special Olympics or the World Games and you get picked, we want to try to be the best athletes to help our team out we can be. So we can show either how good our state is in competing at the USA Games or how good our country is in competing at the World Games and Special Olympics. So I hope you take some facts or advice from Megan Hall on being healthy and adding some healthy tips to your everyday workout and training. Um, Please subscribe to the Brave and Attempt podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the Special Olympic Nebraska YouTube channel as well. We'll have more episodes on healthy tips coming to you more from the Brave and the Attempt podcast.